all of his eyes both of them went black. Not just the pupil or the color, the whites, everything went black. And when you look into someone's eyes, we say, I made eye contact.
Sure.
There is a point where you make a contact when you look in somebody's eyes, not this time. What I would say now is I was looking through him into another dimension. I was looking into two black holes. There was no point where there was any contact. It just went on and on and on. And, of course, I came back to my family that night, not knowing any of this stuff. I went, God, my goodness, you'll never believe the experience I've had with Ted Heath tonight. But now I understand what I was looking at. And I saw this with another British politician, too, before I got into understanding what it was all about. And so when they talk about sacrifices to the gods in history, what the sacrifice is a release of terror, fear, energy in the sacrificial victim, which these people feed off on their dimension. They feed off this energy of fear and terror that is, of course, heightened by the way the ritual is built up to get more and more terror from the victim. And, of course, when you're talking about wars and conflict, imagine the energy of fear and terror that is pouring out of Iraq now, the former Babylon, of course, the former Sumer. Which these entities and forces in these other dimensions feed off, and so we've when in the first Matrix movie, the Morpheus character held up a battery and said they have turned the human race into one of these. In effect, that's a large part of what's happening. The more fear, the more terror, the more low vibrational emotion, the more it's lunch, if you like, for these forces that feed off us. And so the whole satanic thing is very much part of it, and part of what these people are answerable to. And that's why they're so terrified not to do as they're told, because they answer to forces they're terrified of.
You know, what's interesting, too, is you were able to walk into a dressing room where your prime minister was. There's no way you could do that with our president. I mean, they'd have Secret Service all over the place.
Yeah, well, he was a former prime minister, to be fair, but even then, the point's still valid, because I've had experiences with seeing other presidents and what have you from the past, and they're always surrounded by people as well, or bodyguards and what have you. So it is valid, but that's the way it was here, but it's not anymore in terms of the way that the control and the security is being retched up all the time.
Let's go to our wild card line. Welcome to the show. Hi there.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. Go ahead, sir.
This is Gene from Duluth, Minnesota.
Okay, Gene.
Hello, Gene.
Hey, how you guys doing? I've been pondering what would happen if we as Americans were to completely vote out the Republicans and Democrats. Would they go quietly, or would the real agenda of the Illuminati or powers that be become apparent and turn this into an instant military state?
Well, there is an ideal, and then there is a fallback position, I would suggest. The ideal is that the people can continue to be fooled into believing that they live in a democratic, free society. That's the ideal, because then the people just are no problem. They just get on with it and leave the forces of manipulation to manipulate at will. When the people say no on the kind of scale you're talking about, then the forces of control will want to hold on to control as best they can. Again, one of the things that's come up in my research over the years is a major series of terrorist events which lead to a situation where the democratic process is suspended, quote, on the basis of meeting the threat of terrorists, and that would be a military state. When you see how far it's gone now, imagine if there was a nuclear device that went off somewhere in America, or some other grotesque terrorist event, engineered terrorist event, then imagine how much further the control and the military involvement in domestic law enforcement would increase. That's what the aim is. It's to get rid of the whole democratic process. In fact, on that subject, what's happening in Britain now, staggeringly but true, is a bill is going through Parliament. It's called the Legislative and Regulatory Reform Bill. It's a really boring title. But what it does is give power to the Prime Minister and ministers to change any law they choose, to introduce any law they choose, without any parliamentary debate or any democratic consultation.
Dangerous.
And the only limits is they can't change laws that affect taxation, and they cannot impose laws that have a prison sentence of more than 2 years. Anything else, they get the power to do it. It's been called by one professor here the abolition of Parliament bill. That's how far it's going, and that's where they really want to go.
Dangerous. How do the Brits feel about all this, David? How do they feel about things you talk about? I mean, if you were to take a poll, are they favoring the things you say, or are they opposed to it?
Well, when you get people talking, then they are very open to it. I've been staggered by the sea change in consciousness, if you like, in this country in terms of people being open to what's going on. You know, my son's in a band, a lead singer in a band, and he's on a tour of Britain at the moment. And I talk to him every few days, and he's saying, you know, wherever I go, because people know that he's my son, people are coming up and saying, crikey, lovely to meet you. I love what your dad's doing. I couldn't agree more with what's going on in the world. And this kind of feedback, you start to think, oh, crikey, more and more people out there are aware than you would know. And it's the same in America. You know, there is this idea over here among many people that Americans are basically in favor of what's going on in Iraq in general, in favor of what's going on in terms of the Bush administration. And I know every time I come there, I can't find anyone who supports it. There are some, obviously, but there are enormous numbers who don't. But they don't get a hearing. They're not the ones that get access to the mainstream media. It's the people that support the system and repeat the system that are in the public eye. And this is why what people like Charlie Sheen have done is absolutely fantastic. The reason that CNN's poll about what Charlie Sheen said, I think, ended up with 83% in favor.
Actually, it closed to 85%.
85%. Well, it just shows out there how many people are now part of what I called right at the start of this chat, George, the tinderbox of something's not right in the world. It's not right. I'm not buying this anymore. And so it's a very, very exciting time. What we need to do is harness that mentality, harness that change of reality, and turn it into non-cooperation with the system so the few can't control the many, because they can't unless the many cooperate with them.
So true. Wildcard line, your turn with David Icke. Hi there.
Hello, this is John from Kenai, Alaska.
Okay,
I'm
John.
listening on AM 650 KENI, and I just have a couple of quick comments to make. One of them, something I've believed in for a long time, is that a true democracy is an educated and armed mob. And I think it's unfortunate, but I think it's going to come to that in order to take our country back. Reflecting back to the movie Red Dawn, I think that's very close to what's going to end up happening. And then I'll listen off the air. Thank you.
Civil war, revolution within, sad, but it may be what's going to happen, David.
What that will do, I mean, it depends, George, what level of this we're looking at or observing from. If you're observing from the level of these, what I will term demonic forces that are feeding off human misery through the energy it produces and human conflict, then a civil war is another banquet. From their point of view, great. Hey, yeah, let's have some of that. I mean, imagine the energy that's being fed out of Iraq by the civil war that's unfolding there. We need, I would suggest, to see this from a much, much higher level. And if we're going to change this world from a prison to a paradise, then we have to start operating ourselves on the basis of what creates a paradise instead of what further accentuates